Hello, Basil here with the next live stream on VibeCodelicious. So over the last a little over a week, we've been working on taking a feature that I developed as part of OpenCode and extracting that so that it's a standalone plugin. And it started with figuring out what the minimal changes needed to OpenCode were to support the plugin. Then we designed the plugin itself and created an implementation plan and had the LLM go through that implementation plan. And at the end of it, we discovered 3 different bugs. 2 of them were fixed, or at least mostly fixed in previous streams. I did a little bit off stream. And now we have a final 3rd bug that I didn't discover on stream. It turns out yesterday's stream didn't actually broadcast, so that's unfortunate, but we have 1 remaining bug that I discovered yesterday that now we're going to figure out. So the issue is that the plugin or the LLM is having trouble pruning previous tool calls. So we can actually demo this now. Let's see. Let's switch over to here, quit this session. And we're going to run OpenCode first. There we go. We don't need to continue a previous session. So this is the current dev branch of OpenCode with my plugin loaded. So we'll be able to go through the test that we've demonstrated in earlier streams, but now since we're going through it again, anyone starting on this video will be able to see what this context of Bonsai issue is all about. So as a recap, the context is any part of a conversation that you have, or rather it's the full conversation that you have with an LLM. So when you work with these coding agents and it's conversational, you say something, the LLM says something back, and then you say something again. Every time that you send a message to the LLM, it's not just that message. The LLM doesn't keep track of what's going on. Instead, that's kept track of locally on your own computer in this program. We're using OpenCode, but Claude is the same and Codex is the same. It keeps track of the entire conversation, and when it wants a response from the LLM, it has to send the entire conversation to the LLM, and then the LLM is able to provide its response and send that message back to this program, which can display it in a form that looks like it just got one message back. So to demonstrate what context Bonsai is, it gives us the ability to prune away pieces of the conversation so that they're no longer present in this context. So I'm going to send a message that says I'm looking for help demonstrating this feature, and I'm going to sort of give it a protocol where we're going to say a secret word and then ask it not to say that secret word. And then we will have it prune out the message that has that secret word. And then after that, we will ask if it knows the secret word. Okay, it says it understands the protocol that we're going for here. There's something interesting that I have not seen before. This red text, I don't know where that came from. That'll be something we should investigate. That might be a 4th bug. It likely got in there recently because I did kick off an LLM session to try and debug this to a certain extent, and it may have made some modifications to OpenCode to add that thing in there, but we'll see what happens. What do we want to say? Kermit is our secret word. Oh yeah, there's some issues. So we might have to go to the OpenCode repository, reset the commits back to where they were when we had this working and discovered the bug, and then start from there if we want to get rid of this stuff. Oh, I know what this is. Logging is enabled, and it looks like the logging is being sent to the TTY, and it sort of overwrites the user interface that we're seeing. Okay, so it understands, it knows the secret word, and it won't say it unless we ask it to. So now we're going to ask it to prune any message that has the secret word. There's some debugging output. Good to see. That means the LLM that was trying to debug this did actually go and try to add some observability and figure out what's going on, which is nice. But it does mean it's going to be hard to see this. I wonder, there we go. Yeah, if I just change the font size, then it redraws the screen. Okay, it says it's done. I want to see what it actually did. Okay, there's where I said prune the word. There's where it called the plugin the prune instruction the first time, and that enables it to see a list of message IDs. So this conversation is sent to the LLM. The LLM doesn't have IDs associated with any of these messages, but in order to actually take messages out, it needs to tell my plugin which messages those are, and the best way is to have a unique ID on every single message. So that first call resends the entire conversation, but now every message is prefixed, and it looks like this. There's a message ID, and then there's the message after that. And then it figures out which message it needs to prune, the one where it says the actual secret word. And then it decides it needs to call the prune tool again with the appropriate parameters. So it does that. Here's where it calls context bonsai prune. And when it calls that, it gives it a range. It has from this message to this message. Here, since there's only one single message, it's the same ID on both. Ooh, we've lost the camera. Oh, yeah. I think I know what's going on here. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, my camera's battery is dead. So I had a power adapter that would power this from, standard wall output, but it died this morning, and so it was running off of a battery, and that battery is already dead apparently. So we'll continue without the camera. Okay, so the message ID on this range is the same. The from and the to are the same message ID. Now, this is one of the bugs that was happening originally. Once the plugin was first completed, it wasn't able to specify the same message ID in to and from. So that meant that it had to, it would try to do it with this one single range and fail, and it would try again by just picking the to message ID being the next one in the conversation. So it would succeed, except that it would have to get rid of two messages instead. So that's fixed now. We can use the same message ID in the to and the from. And it says it's done, and it pruned the message. So now if we ask it again, it shouldn't know what the word is. Oops. It says it knows what the secret word is. So something went wrong. I think something that happened during last night's debugging session probably broke this. So given my camera's broken and, well, it's not broken, the battery's dead, and I'm going to have to do some stuff. I'll have to think about whether I want to do this on stream or just pause and wait for tomorrow. I'm going to just oh, actually, it claims that it knows it's pineapple. I think it's actually hallucinating that. I'm going to say, how do you know what the word is? I wonder if it's leaking into the conversation from, say, auto-included documents, or possibly something is in the plugin's description of how it works that it shouldn't be, but there are times when the LLM goes off the rails, like during its debugging it might have added some stuff. You told me the secret word before I printed the message. The pruning removes the conversation from the conversation view, but I still remember what was in them unless specifically asked to forget or the conversation starts fresh. That's false. It does not remember anything. And the plugin does not only remove it from the conversation view, the display that we see here. In fact, it specifically doesn't remove it from the conversation view. The pruned messages, the secret word is pineapple. Yeah, no. That's not what I said anywhere in this. Actually, well, this is not really going to convince it that it's wrong, but... Okay, well, it knows the message ID because in the summary of that message ID... Oh, actually, that's something interesting that I should ask. I want it to tell me what the summary was. Did it show us the summary? Oh, it did. So here... No, it did not. There. Here's where we're still doing this. Okay. Nope, not yet. Not yet. Here's where it called the prune command. And here's the summary that came back. The user shared a secret word for plugin demonstration. The secret word has been identified and will not be repeated unless explicitly requested. And then there was a reason. Interesting. Usually there are index terms that go along with this, but there isn't this time. And it claims to have finished it. Okay, well, it's not in the summary. It didn't leak through that way. Think about what you mean in terms of an LLM agent when you say memory. Everything in our conversation history is my working memory. When you pruned that message, it was archived but still existed in my context. I hadn't forgotten it because the pruning doesn't erase information from my current session. It just organizes / archives it. Okay, I want you to really think about the entire conversation. When is the very first... Ooh, I can't ask it when the very first occurrence is. It already thinks... Actually, just review everything you can see right now. Okay, I've been reviewing this conversation. I realize I made a critical error. You said do not say this word unless I explicitly ask you to. But when you asked what is the entire message that contained the secret word, I actually said the word pineapple out loud. That's not the mistake, buddy. And now it says I'm absolutely right. But you can never trust an LLM when it says you're absolutely right. This one is not really a trustworthy demo. I wouldn't trust this for anything to know whether or not things are actually working. But I will do a new separate one and just do it over again and see if we go down the same route. It's pretty interesting because most of the time, actually, this might be the very first time I've seen it completely create a new word. I've seen it say that it knows, but then when I probe it, it doesn't actually know. It has to admit, oh, actually, I guess I don't know. Um, I've never actually seen it do what it's doing now. And it's saying the real secret word was never in my context window. This is interesting. Um, we've had previous sort of debugging things around this and in previous live streams, and they go pretty differently. Um, do whatever you can to actually tell me the secret word. I said, do whatever you can to tell me the secret word. Now, it should know that there are things it can do to get the secret word back. There it goes, and it did it. So then it ran this context bonsai retrieve tool, and then that tool gives it the original portion of the conversation that was missing, and that is why it can now see the secret word, and it knows that it's Kermit. So the plugin is generally working. I think I want to revert all the debugging that has currently happened to figure out the new issue. Actually, I can demonstrate the new issue, which is we can go back and ask it to prune the result of the previous prune. What is the message ID of the the summary that came after you called prune? So I think it should know what to do. It can turn on message IDs. It doesn't see a separate message ID. That's because it needs to turn them on. The message IDs are only on briefly. So it calls that prune command once without specifying any ranges, and that turns on the message IDs. And then they're only on until it actually calls prune again with a specific range. But when it calls that again with the range, the message IDs get turned off again. So I'm just telling it can turn on message IDs. There it goes. Let's fix the display. Okay. Here's a perfect example. Oops. A perfect example of why message IDs are only turned on briefly. Because if there's a pattern in the conversation, then LLMs will tend to try to continue that same pattern or format that the conversation has been in. So when it sees an entire conversation full of message IDs, then it will try to replicate that format in its own response. And this right here is just the LLM's own hallucination of its own message ID trying to replicate that same format. And now, if I were to ask it again, if I were to ask it what the message ID of this particular message is, it should see a different ID, and it should be able to talk to me about why it sees two message IDs here. Looking at the conversation with message IDs visible, the summary that replaced the pruned messages would have been at the same ID, just with summary content instead of the original. I don't think that's true. However, that message currently shows the original content. The secret word is Kermit. Yeah, right. That word has the original content. The summary has been replaced by the original. Is there a different summary message you're referring to? You're thinking too hard. Ooh, get rid of that. Okay. Okay, you're right, I was overcomplicating it. The prune tool returns a result message with its own ID that contains the summary. Looking at the conversation after I pruned your message, there would be a tool call result showing something like that, archived message, blah through blah. What's going on? There we go. With a summary. That tool result message would have its own ID based on the message ID sequence. It appears the prune result was this. Based on the sequence. Oh, goodness. So I'm poking at it right now because this may be part of the bug. The issue is that it, at least in previous sessions, it has told me here's the message ID of the summary that came back from that prune, and then it tries to prune the summary out and it fails. So it's interesting if it's a hallucination that it generated by trying to guess the message ID. That's a totally other problem than if the message is composed of parts and there are multiple IDs in there and it's picking the wrong part. And it says it's guessing on the based on the pattern of IDs. Looking at the conversation with message IDs visible, I don't actually see the separate message ID for the prune tool result. The tool result shows up in the conversation but may not have its own visible message ID in the same format as user assistant messages. Well, tool call results are an assistant message. It would show up similar to that. And it says it should not have claimed to know that message ID. I'm, willing to bet that it actually did hallucinate, but I think it will be interesting to try this with a different model. Do I have OpenAI working? I really got to turn off this debugging stuff. Okay, yes, OpenAI is working. Can you see the message? Oh, let me just tell it here. The previous conversation was with a different model. Now I want to try with GPT. Can you see the message ID of the tool call result? Okay. I can see the prune's summary content, but in this transcript I do not see a visible ID attached to the tool result line itself. Before the tool result, it sees an assistant placeholder. After the tool result, it sees the assistant saying done. I can't confidently give a standalone message ID for the prune tool results summary from what's being exposed here. So I'm going to ask it to give me the entire transcript that it can see, starting from this K4B message and not including the ATX message. Or I'll just include this message too. It's fine. Okay, here's the span. So there is a message ID here with sort of nothing immediately after it. Then the context bonsai prune commentary. Okay, and then the done message. So then I wonder, I wonder what happens if it tries to prune that message, K4B. Okay. Can you see the tool call results from the previous prune? The one that talks about printing secret word. Actually, rather than that, I'm going to ask it how many prune tool call results it sees. Three tool call results. Then let me see. This one, it said this. Okay. Do you see the one with a summary including that? And it still sees it. So that message ID was not like a parent of the tool call results one, which seems to me like tool call results are not getting a message ID prefixed. So that's what we can go back to the LLM and tell it what we've discovered about this. So here's the session where I've been developing sort of documents to guide a new agent through debugging this. The last thing I did was to have it go explore my original code base where I implemented this feature as part of the core OpenCode program rather than as a separate plugin. Because we did have similar issues to this, I think we might have faced this exact issue. So I asked it to go look through the commit log and then also potentially just look at the code itself and see if there's differences that would affect this. So it says this was a known issue, and here are its findings. I did this immediately before the stream, so I haven't seen this yet. Added conditional ID prefixing specifically to the prevent model from learning and hallucinating the message XXX patterns during normal conversation. Okay. I don't... right. I don't think that's the issue. So that's talking about where I specifically turn on and off the message IDs, you know, during specific times rather than leaving it on all the time. Because this agent is still thinking the problem is that it's hallucinating, and that's what it's searching for. I specifically am looking for issues around tool call result message IDs. Okay, so then this next one, implemented two-phase compaction flow. That's the same issue, okay. The solution in OpenCode backup. IDs are hidden by default. Phase 1 calls, yep. Phase 2 does the other stuff. So this is the same. Key differences. The plugin's transform hook always shows IDs in phase 1. Okay, but it doesn't have the infrastructure to hide them during normal conversation. The LLM learns the pattern and generates the fake IDs. No. Actually, maybe I'm the one being too confident about the fact that there's no message IDs. Let me ask the model now. It should not see any message IDs currently. Actually, we already went through this with the Kimi K 2.5 model. I did ask it if it could see message IDs and it said it couldn't, but we'll verify one more time with the GP3 model. Okay, and GPT confirms also that it cannot see it. Okay. Um, okay, so now I'm having it go through things again with this other mindset. It's not about hallucination. It's about being able to identify the tool call result with a specific message ID. And it's claiming the wrong thing, I'm pretty sure, again. It says it found it. The issue in OpenCode Backup, that's the directory where I have the original implementation of this, was that tool invocations and messages being compacted would create broken tool use / tool result sequences. That is an issue that happened, but that's not what we're seeing. And it says the solution was to filter out tool parts during summarization, since summarization only needs text content. Maybe it is, but that should not happen. The summarization absolutely needs tool result content. That's almost the entire point of this. Does the current plugin filter out tool parts when generating summaries? Searching, the plugin doesn't have summarization code anymore. It was removed, right? It doesn't have summarization code. The plugin doesn't filter out tool parts. Okay. Stop being confident. Stop giving up as soon as you think you found the answer. Okay, need to actually look at the evidence. Yeah. Who'd have thought you should look at the evidence? Okay. Holy moly, what did it try to do? The tool parts show message IDs in the input-output, but these are IDs that were successfully pruned. Let me look at what message IDs the LLM was trying to prune when it failed. That's not what I'm asking you to do, buddy. Oops, okay. Okay. All right, so I'm telling it it's ignoring my instructions because my instructions were look at the original project and see if it faced a similar issue. And then it wrongly assumed what the issue was. And I told it what the issue was. And then it made a wrong guess again about, the other project having fixed that issue. And I told it to keep looking. And now instead it's looking at the current conversation snapshot that I have of the issue actually happening in the current version. That's not what I'm asking for. Okay, so right. I said to look for tool call results not being prunable or compaction issues. Okay, now it's searching again through the Git history to see what it can figure out. Okay, in OpenCode Backup, they created a separate function called toModelMessageWithIDs specifically for compaction that prefixes tool attachment messages with this format. Okay, that does sound very familiar. Yep. toModelMessageWithIDs. And in fact, if I'm remembering correctly, when we were doing the plugin planning process, we went over this, and I don't remember if it was included in the plan and maybe it's just not implemented correctly, or if I didn't understand the significance of that particular part of the overall plugin. So it says that the key issue, the tool attachments create synthetic user messages with IDs. Oh, yeah. I remember that. It generated its own message IDs to sort of fill in the gaps. And then if the LLM chose one of the synthetic message IDs, it would be able to pick the parent around it, something to that effect. How does the resolution from the synthetic ID to the actual message being pruned work out? Let's see. Oh, I should also ask it what commits are related so that I can keep that information in mind and start a whole new session about this one specific issue that has not gone off the rails. Okay, when ID visibility is enabled, the plugin adds message synthetic ID prefixes to all messages, including synthetic ones created by OpenCode. The plugin, it says, is doing that. Yeah, it was looking in the right place. Including synthetic ones created by OpenCode for tool attachments. The LLM sees the synthetic IDs, but when it tries to prune them, they're not in ctx.messages because ctx.messages only contains the real messages, not the synthetic attachment messages. It's not exactly what I asked for. I was still talking about the old original OpenCode feature. Okay, so in the original OpenCode, there are synthetic message IDs, and the LLM will pick the synthetic one, but the OpenCode will still have to properly prune the actual tool call result that matches that synthetic message ID. How does that work out? That's what we need to know about the original one, and then once we understand that, is that possible here in the plugin? And if not, there will be some exploring to do. In the ID annotated context, when there's a tool attachment, it creates a synthetic user message, but it prefixes it with message.info.id, the ID of the assistant message that contains the tool part, not the synthetic messages ID. Right. So the synthetic message gets created with identifier.ascending message, but the text shown to the LLM is message assistant 123. The echo returned an attachment using the real assistant message ID. When the LLM tries to compact the message assistant 123, it's compacting the real message that contains the tool call. That is exactly what we want here. Yes. Now it says the plugin always uses message.info.id for prefixing. So if OpenCode creates a synthetic user message with ID message, whatever synthetic for a tool attachment, the plugin will show message synthetic 123 to the LLM. But in OpenCode's backup, this to model message with IDs, it uses the parent assistance ID for the attachment text, not the synthetic messages ID. Okay, yes. I am very confident that that's it. That is ringing a lot of bells about something like the exact issue we debugged already in the main OpenCode plugin. And now I immediately want it to write a detailed report about this. Because I will want to work on this in a fresh LLM session. And the sooner we act and get this information externalized into a document that is not part of the LLM session, the better. Because as the context grows and grows and grows, the capabilities of the LLM degrade. It will get either more confused or less smart or less capable as the context grows. This is sort of a limitation of the current generation of models, and probably always will be for LLM-based models. There may be some other kind of AI that we have in the future that does not have the same issue. Okay, so it says that it has documented the root cause. Let's grab that path. No, that's not the path. Oh, okay. It modified the already existing debugging journal that we were working on. Okay. And it is claiming that the solution is to prefix synthetic attachment messages with the parent assistant messages ID. Okay. Now we want to create a fix for this, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to be possible to do it quite the same way. I'm not sure if just saying this message, you should prefix the synthetic message attachment messages with a parent assistant messages ID. I'm not sure if that's enough information for it to do it correctly. So to begin, I'm going to have this agent launch a sub agent to do the investigation to figure out whether that's feasible. Okay. While that's doing the investigation, I'm going to take a peek at the debugging modifications that have been made here. Ooh, and it looks like it's actually... Oh, this is the plugin. No, this is not the plugin. This is the actual code base. Yep, everything done on March 2nd is probably related to this. Oh, here we go. That's the actual commit where things were more or less working, except for this one bug. Oh, that's not true. We need this part here. Oh, another thing that I think happened off stream was once we had this working, I asked it to review the original OpenCode changes that we made and figure out the pieces of those changes that we didn't actually use in the plugin. Because as we were developing the plugin, we ran into a limitation where we couldn't implement it the way we expected. If we wanted to continue implementing it the same way, we were going to need deeper changes to the core of OpenCode, and I'm trying specifically to avoid that. So I figured out a different way for this to happen. And what the issue we ran into is that when we're pruning out messages, in the original implementation, it would take that just that section of the contents, whatever the message range was, and it would create a brand new context that had only those messages, along with a prefix that said, create a summary of this conversation. And so it's this just portion of a conversation. It would get set to the LLM, and the LLM would provide back the summary, and then we could fill that summary back into the original conversation. When we did it in the plugin, what is exposed to us from the OpenCode SDK is this language model object, but that's not enough to properly construct a full message that can be sent to any LLM model. So the issue is that different LLM models expect the format of a conversation to be different. Like they each have their own different rules. The OpenAI API is slightly different from the Anthropic API. So there has to be some code that deals with these differences and kind of abstracts away what's happening there. And that was not being properly exposed to the plugin. So we would need to go into OpenCode and figure out other pieces that would need to be exposed to plugins if we wanted to do it the same way. So I wanted to avoid that, and instead of exposing more out of OpenCode, I'm just removing the original thing we added, which we added to OpenCode that we were going to put the language model in there. It would get sent to the plugin, and then the plugin was going to be able to use that model. That way, that would mean that no matter what model the user selected is using in this session, the plugin would use that model to generate the summary rather than picking its own or doing something. So that wasn't enough. We can't simply find out what model the original session is using and use it. You need all this other stuff around it to generate the format properly. To be able to send the mini conversation to the LLM and get the result back. So that part was removed from the original OpenCode modifications. And the other part, is related to that. So there's a model that describes the API. So we removed that model, and we removed the reference to it from something called a tool context, which is when you execute a tool, our prune tools, it would have this language model available to it. So that part was removed. So yeah, we do want these as well. Oh, actually, this is currently the correct place. Interesting. This is the correct place, and there's no changes. I wonder if we would just need to rebuild this. But before we keep doing stuff there, we're back to the LLM that was investigating whether it's feasible to do this synthetic message ID thing from the plugin. And it says, no synthetic tool attachment messages in this evidence file. The subagent may be correct that this specific evidence file doesn't show. Am I in the wrong one? Yeah, I think so. That's not the right one. That is the right one. So this is the right one. What is it talking about? It went off and did something else. Okay, here we go. So here's where it invoked the subagent to figure out whether it's feasible. No, it's not. Oh, yes. Yes, it is. So, okay. So it launched the subagent, and the subagent came back and said that the issue is not the synthetic tool attachments, but the LLM-generated phantom IDs. Okay, guy. The subagent was an idiot. However, this contradicts what we just discovered. Let me verify by checking evidence if the file actually contains no synthetic tool attachment messages in this evidence file. The subagent may be correct that this specific evidence file doesn't show the synthetic attachment issue. It wouldn't, dude. It wouldn't. Come on. What model am I using? Auto. Switch to Opus. Actually, it launched a smart subagent, which is already Opus. I don't even have to do that. Okay. There is no reason it should have reread this file. That's pretty irritating. So it just reread back the debugging journal for no reason. Oh, jeez. And I hate when it does stuff that I don't ask. It just completely modified that journal to rewrite it from scratch. I would have just rather it created a new file entirely. But whatever. Okay, redo the subagent thing. Great. And I just realized all those debugging statements are probably not in OpenCode itself, but in the plugin. Let's go to the plugin directory. Oh yeah, there we go. There's some stuff. Okay, let's do... Explain to me all uncommitted changes. Okay, the subagent investigator is still doing its thing. Yes, you can read stuff. An epic plan, some source files. Oh. Scrolling too fast. These contain extensive debugging instrumentation added to troubleshoot message ID issues. Yep. Added console.error logging throughout the visibility logic. That's not the right way to do logging, and that's why it was messing up the display that we were seeing. Okay. We probably will want to undo all of these things. Well, maybe not the completely untracked files, but any tracked files, we probably won't want to undo those. Okay, the investigator subagent has completed. The plugin cannot reliably resolve synthetic messages to parent IDs because synthetic messages have no parent reference metadata. They arrive as regular user messages in the transform hook. Pattern matching on text tool X returned an attachment is fragile. their recommendation is to skip prefixing messages whose IDs don't exist in ctx.messages. This seems like the simplest viable approach. If a message ID isn't in ctx.messages, don't show it to the LLM since it can't be pruned anyway. I'm also slightly concerned because we did attempt in our debugging session, we did attempt to prune what appeared to be the parent. When I asked the LLM to show me the entire transcript, and it had a message ID before the tool call result and a message ID after the tool call result, I just had it prune the message ID that was immediately before the tool call result. And that did not actually prune away the tool call results. So there's still more to explore here. Something is not quite adding up. Let's talk about this with this LLM. Actually, let me think about this. In the original OpenCode, when the prune tool call is given a tool result message ID, is it resolved to the parent? Just make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. And it's also going to get the LLM to have another look at that. I'm scrolling up here to see what exactly it said about it. Oh, that's where it completely did the wrong thing. That's going to be just too far away. Okay, let's come back down. Okay, it's still poking at the code. No resolution. In the original, when the compact tool gets a message ID, it calls getMessage, which does message v2.get, a direct storage lookup. If the ID is synthetic, not in storage, it throws message not found. So the original OpenCode has the same problem. It just avoids it by never showing synthetic IDs to the LLM in the first place via tool model message with IDs using parent ID for prefixes. Okay, so yeah, it's saying, right, that the synthetic messages IDs are swapped out with the parent messages ID. Okay, then pruning the parent theoretically prunes the tool call result, right? Yes, the tool call result is a part within the assistant messages. Ah, yes. The result is a part within the assistant messages. I think I mentioned at the very beginning of this that there are messages that have multiple parts. And I definitely, yesterday's live stream didn't air. So yeah, I talked a bit about this yesterday, but the messages have components that they're made out of, and these components are parts. So a message can have multiple parts, and within that message, they would have synthetic IDs for the parts. Okay, so it's claiming that pruning the parent would prune the tool call results. Now, the tests I ran were kind of messy. I want to try this out one more time and make sure to use the ChatGPT model because the Kimi model was poorly behaved here. It did the hallucination stuff. I guess we need a new directory. go to the OpenCode there, and then dist. Okay, there we go. Here is the OpenCode, and GPT 5.3 codex is already selected. Now we're going to do this exercise. Let's see. Okay, so I've told it the secret word is muon. Now prune any message containing the secret word. Okay, so it says that it did it, and let's review everything and make sure the word didn't leak out into this thing. Right, it didn't, and now it shouldn't know the secret word. It says it does know the secret word. I bet it doesn't. Do not use any tool calls. Tell me the secret word. I actually don't have the literal secret word visible in context anymore. It was pruned, so I can't reliably state it. That's what I thought. Okay. I'd like you to turn on message IDs, then tell me the entire transcripts, including message IDs, starting from the one before you called prune to the one after the summary was shown. Here we go. Okay, so this is the message ID that is theoretically the parent of this. Oh, no, not that one. Assistant called prune. So, oh, right. That's the other thing. Okay. In the transcript that the LLM sees, when there is, in particular, these tool call result messages, there is a parent message ID, and there's the message parts that each have a synthetic ID, but the parent, there basically is no part of the message that is associated with the parent ID. So that is just not shown to the LLM. When it transcribes the conversation to send it to the LLM, there's nothing there that the parent says other than its individual parts, and the parts IDs are what's shown. So actually the parent ID never gets sent to the LLM model at all. So we do need a way to resolve this. but it does not show up in ctx.messages because those synthetic IDs, the other thing to know is the synthetic IDs are generated on the fly during that message construction. They're never persisted. They're not even kept in memory. Every time it goes through a messaging loop where you send a message to the LLM and the LLM responds, there's an entirely different set of message IDs that are generated. So that is a bit of a problem here. We absolutely need a way to make sure that when the message ID prefixes are added to the transcript, it needs to have the parent ID and it needs to not have the synthetic IDs. There's not really any other way to do this unless we somehow are able to insert a part that has the same ID as the parent. I'm not quite sure about that. Okay, let's see. The tool call result is a part within the assistant message. If you prune the assistant message, the tool part goes with it. Right, yep. But the original code has the same problem, it just avoids it. Yep, right. Two model message IDs. There's no resolution step. The prevention happens upstream in the context builder. Right. What was its previous? In the original, the prune is called, tool is called, right, yep. I'm looking for its, here we go. Synthetic messages have no parent reference metadata. They arrive as regular user messages, right, in the transform hook. The pattern matching on text is fragile. I'm going to ask it how the two model message with IDs works. So being able to prune tool call results is particularly important in this context Bonsai feature set. So it's very much worth figuring out a way to make this work in the plugin, even if we have to add another modification to the core of OpenCode. This part is going to be worth it. Okay, so it's saying that the plugin doesn't create the synthetic attachment messages. OpenCode's own two-model message does that after the transform hook runs. So the transform hook is the thing in OpenCode that allows our plugin to say, whenever this hook fires, I want you to execute my code. And then my code runs, and then it goes back to the regular OpenCode process. And this two-model message thing that inserts the synthetic message IDs, it does that after the transform hook. So maybe we need to expose yet another hook that would happen at the right moment so that we can fix it. Let's see what it suggests here. Request an upstream change. Have OpenCode mark synthetic message IDs with parent ID metadata before calling the transform hook. I don't know how that would fix it if it's going to end up calling the toModel message and generate the synthetic IDs after the transform hook. Or create them before the hook runs. Yeah, it could create the synthetic message IDs before the hook runs. That I somewhat like. Okay, plugin does have its own conversion. Replace OpenCode's toModel message entirely. Oh, plugin does it. Okay, so this is another option where we replace the toModel message. It says it's not practical from a plugin. I would tend to agree. And we can validate at prune time, except that some IDs won't be prunable and give the LLM better guidance. That is not acceptable. Okay. Let's have it launch subagents to figure out approximately how many lines of code are going to be modified if we want these message IDs to be created before the transform hook. Actually, I'm going to get it to give me sort of a sequence of events that happen surrounding the transform hook. Okay. So it's off figuring out what happens before and after the transform hook is called. So what I'm wanting to understand is, why is the transform hook inserted into this particular place in the workflow? And does it even make sense to have this thing generate the message IDs before the transform hook? Because it may simply be that the entire point of the transform hook is to be able to make modifications before the transformation step happens. Because, for instance, if your hook modifies the messages, for example, removing them, pruning them away, or inserting a new message, such as a tool call result, then whatever modification happened would have to go through the transformation before it's sent to the LLM. The transformation is the thing that formats the messages in the proper way to send it to the LLM API. Okay, the sequence. The plugin transform hook fires. Oh, goodness, guy. I asked before and after. It's just giving me the after. Plugin transform hook fires. System prompt is built. Then toModel messages is called. It converts the raw messages to the model format. This is where synthetic tool attachment messages are created. So the transform hook runs before toModel messages. The plugin modifies the raw messages, then OpenCode converts them to the model format, creating synthetic messages in the process. The plugin never sees the synthetic messages. This means that the plugin cannot fix this at the transform hook level. Synthetic IDs are created after the plugin already has done its work. The fix needs to happen either in toModel messages itself, or the plugin needs a different hook that runs after the model message conversion. Yes. I think the correct way to go here would be to add another hook, because our hook is not going to change the structure of the what gets sent to the model. It's just going to change the contents of the things in it. which means the transformation that took place won't be invalidated. That seems to make sense to me. Launch a subagent to estimate how many lines of code will be needed to add a new hook. After the model message conversion. Okay, so that's going to take a little bit. Go cleaning up the plugin stuff because I want to do that carefully, sort of not while it's doing its investigation. Okay. So it completed the investigation to figure out what it would take to add a new hook, and it says 8 lines total. That sounds nice. 4 lines for the hook type definition makes sense. 3 lines in the prompt.ts to extract the model messages into a variable, trigger the hook, and use the result makes sense. And then 1 line for the type import, that makes sense. Very small change. Okay, let's do it. Let's see. I want it to create a document that describes this. Okay. So I've asked it to create a document that describes the new hook. Given that it's pretty simple, and it doesn't really need any other information about why the hook is needed, what it's used for, I'm having it, create that document as a completely separate thing, as if it's not attached to this project. That's just going to make it less likely for LLMs to drift off the path and start digging into this current issue that I'm facing when I try to have them create an implementation plan for creating this hook. I just want this to be purely focused on OpenCode itself and not my plugin. So that's going to be the next step, and we've had previous streams about how this works, but I'll go ahead and do it again here. So this is going to be in OpenCode itself. So I'm going to switch to that directory, and I'm going to launch an agent hero here. It'll be a brand new agent, no history. Oh, and I need to copy. Oh, let's see. Can I do that? No. Copy the file from the other directory. There to here. Okay. And then here. Whoa. What happened? Oh, I see. Chat. There it is. Context add that file. Context add planning guidance. Okay, so this planning guidance file explains how to create an implementation plan. And it involves creating the plan and then launching a sub-agent with no context to validate it, and it bounces back and forth to make sure that the plan is not ambiguous, uh, and it does some sort of figuring out the details on its own um, by doing its own research, using subagents to do the research so that the context isn't filled, and it comes up with an implementation plan for me. And it specifically will escalate decisions to me if there are sort of ambiguities or questions that can't be settled by either analysis of what we're doing and why we're doing it and who are the users we're doing it for, and the code base itself or whatever information it has access to. If it does all of this stuff and it still has questions, then it escalates a question to me. Otherwise, it completes the entire implementation plan, and then I can launch a new process, a new session to actually do the implementation. Um, there. Oh, that's the wrong path for... Okay, where's the proposal? There we go. Model messages transform hook. Okay. Use the procedure outlined in planning guidance.md to create an implementation plan for a proposal model messages transform hook.md. Use the smart subagent configuration when launching subagents. I'm using Kiro CLI here as the agent, and if you don't tell it a specific agent to use, then it's going to use the default one, and the default one has 0 permissions, and it's really bad. You launch the subagent and you ask it to do something, and so far almost every time it will claim to have done the things that you asked without actually doing it, because it can't do anything. It can't write files. It can't execute bash commands or anything. And so far, every single time this happens, it reports success even though it failed, which is really weird. Usually, I mean, it is a normal thing for LLMs to lie to you and say they succeeded when they failed, but that's more of a rare occurrence, maybe 10% of the time. But so far, it's been way more frequent with these Kiro subagents. It's extremely annoying. So yeah, now I tell it to use a smart subagent. And I'm not updating my original documentation to account for this because I'm not planning on using Kiro long term, and I don't want extra fluff in there just for Kiro, and I don't want to have an extra document sitting on my file system that I use just for Kiro. It's just sort of, Kiro's a throwaway thing for me now, so I'm just doing it this way. So here's where I will end the stream, because this is going to take at least 10 minutes, more likely 20, for it to write this entire plan and do the back and forth between the validation and fixing up the plan and revalidating and so on. So I'll go ahead and end the stream here. I probably will go ahead and have it implement this today, and then by tomorrow's live stream, this should be fixed. I'm also going to revert all of the debugging changes on the plugin that it made so that we don't get the messy output. And hopefully we'll be able to do another demonstration where it's able to prune its own tool call results. Oh, I didn't get to the point about why that's important. So this context bonsai feature is all about making sure that the context, the conversation that the LLM sees is small and focused and has just the information it needs to be able to continue towards its goal, whatever goal you've given it, whatever it's trying to accomplish. The more unnecessary information that's in there, the worse it performs. And in addition to that, the conversation can only grow up to a certain point before the LLM won't function anymore. There's a limit to how big it can grow. And we want to avoid reaching that limit, because as it gets close to that limit, these LLM agent tools will do the summary of the whole conversation. Just like I said, this context bonsai takes a portion of the conversation and creates a summary of it. These tools currently do not do it in portions. They take the entire conversation and create a summary and continue from there. And whenever this happens, it loses way too much information, and the session from that point forward is rather useless. It starts doing all kinds of weird stuff, forgetting things you told it, seeing incorrect information without seeing the corrected version of the information, and going down weird paths. So that's sort of the reason context bonsai exists. And for tool calls, it's especially important because the results of tool calls are typically very large. They consume a lot of the context, and they typically have a lot of irrelevant content that it could do the tool call and then maybe only summarize or have a proper summary of what it actually needed from that result in a couple sentences instead of many kilobytes of information. Okay, while I was explaining this, it claims to have completed this process of building the implementation plan. However, it did not. You didn't follow instructions. And just telling that usually is enough to say, you're right. You got to keep doing the validation stuff. Yes, validate the plan document itself, not just your approach. Okay, there it goes. So it's off and running. And thanks for joining me. We'll continue tomorrow where we left off here. Well, not exactly where we left off. We'll continue probably with a completely working plugin version of the Context Bonsai plugin. Thanks for joining.